We now return to the Coteries of New York. Before we continue on here, let's look at all the things that we didn't read about. So, a fledgling, newly created vampire still under Sire's protection, the prince is a vampire who has claimed a given expanse of domain as their own, generally a city, and supports that claim against all others. The term can refer to a kindred of either sex. The hunger, the urge to feed. For vampires, the hunger replaces all other drives with its own powerful call. A vessel is a source of blood for sustenance or pleasure, primarily mortal. The beast, the inchoate drives and urges that threaten to turn a vampire into a mindless, ravening monster. Kane, a mythical figure considered to be the first and most powerful vampire. Some vampires refer to themselves as Canites, members of the race of Kane. Kindred. Camarilla, term for vampires as a whole, or a single vampire. According to rumor, this term came about in the 15th or 16th century after the Anarch revolt. Masquerade. The habit, or tradition, of hiding the existence of vampires from humanity, designed to protect vampires from destruction at the hands of mankind. The masquerade was adopted after the medieval Inquisition claimed many kindred unlives. That is a thing, too, apparently. There was sort of a Dark Ages offshoot of the game that dealt with this. The traditions. The 6 traditions form the core framework for governance among kindred. The first tradition, the masquerade, thou shalt not reveal thy true nature. The second tradition, the domain, thy domain is thine own concern. All others owe thee respect while in it. The third tradition, the progeny, thou shalt only sire another with the permission of thine elder. The fourth tradition, the accounting, those thou create are thine own children, their sins are thine to endure. The fifth tradition, hospitality, honor one another's domain. Without the word of acceptance, thou art nothing. The sixth tradition, destruction, thou art forbidden to destroy another of thy kind. The right of destruction belongeth only to thine elder. We should probably remember the traditions, because otherwise we might make a bad choice. Kane. A term for mortals, largely contemptuous. The phrase kindred and kine refers to the world at large, everything. Sect, a group of vampires arguably united under a common philosophy. The 2 most widely known sects currently populating the night are the Camarilla and the Anarch movement. I believe the other, at least from what I remember, are the Sabbat, and basically the Camarilla believe in the masquerade, that vampires should stay hidden for survival, whereas the Sabbat are basically like Magneto and believe that vampires should openly rule everything. Sire, a vampire's begetter, the kindred who created them. Okay. Back to the game. We inspect the kitchen, hoping to find something to drink. Nothing. No regular food either. Feels strange that Kadir could be a more thoughtful host than your new sire, even if only in that respect. You briefly wonder if the sheriff might have a hidden side. With nothing left to do, you lie on the couch with the TV playing in the background for company. Columbo reruns. Kojak reruns. President of the United States got himself into serious trouble again. I don't know if Kojak was ever aired in the United States. President of the United States got himself out of trouble again. Pundits start yelling over each other about things that seemed a little bit less insignificant just 2 days ago. You start drifting off, reflecting about another night of confusing conversations and worldwide chattering revelations. Am I thinking about the wrong guy? Maybe I'm not thinking of Kojak. There's a popular European TV detective, isn't there? I don't remember the name. Anyway. How many more before you finally understand what happened to you and what you're supposed to do now? You keep coming back to the life you left behind, the people you should contact, things you want to pick up from your apartment. You wonder when you'll have the chance for either. As you start to feel the same tiredness that made you drift into a cold sleep last night, you settle in the back room. The bed is comforting, the lack of windows less so. You leave the light bulb on. Looking at it, you realize it's the closest you'll ever come to staring at the sun on a breezy summer day again. A wave of melancholy overwhelms you. A few minutes later, your consciousness fades, and you take the plunge into darkness again, sinking, 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 sinking. Oh, okay. So we actually could have just stopped to rest. Tutorial. Hunger is at the heart of a vampire's existence. To ignore it is to tempt the beast to take over in its desire to feed. To To overindulge in feeding may threaten the Masquerade while staining what humanity you have left. In Coteries of New York, having high hunger is indicated by a progressively thicker, bloody frame around the screen, like the one you see now. As your hunger grows, so does this indicator. Your hunger may increase when you call upon your vampiric powers, or when you need to mend your wounds after a fight. When your hunger reaches the maximum level, you will receive a warning after you complete a piece of the story. Ignore it at your own peril. Some choices might only become visible if your hunger is high enough. Similarly, high hunger may block off some choices, as you'll be able to see after pressing continue. Okay. To decrease your hunger, you need to feed. Whenever you see a feeding opportunity, you can take the risk to hunt and slake your hunger. You will need to keep the hunger at bay if you are to uphold the Masquerade and survive the nights that await you. Okay, well that's interesting. So there is actually interactivity here. It's not just reading. You open your eyes. The bed isn't warm. The room is filled with artificial light from the ceiling. The solid metal door, solid metal door, is closed. Normally, you'd stretch for a bit. On some mornings, you'd probably throw the quilt over yourself and snooze a moment longer. But that was before. The way you woke up now, you were fully conscious. No grogginess, nothing weighing you down, just a nagging need in the back of your head. Hunger. Not as severe as the last time, but unmistakably there. You get up and open the door to the main room. A digital clock on the TV shows you the time, 9:04 p.m. You walk over to the blinds and retract them cautiously. The only light coming in is New York City's artificial nighttime luminescence. So that's what your waking hours are going to be like now. You miss the sunlight already. You're seriously considering just walking out of the apartment and figuring this all out by yourself, but then you come back to the memory of Kadir's exotic sword being raised in the gallery. Maybe sticking around isn't that bad of an idea after all. You keep jumping channels for around half an hour and then switching to streaming services. Almost as if the universe had a sense of irony, you catch True Blood in the flood of recommendations. The doorbell rings. It's Sophie. Good evening, Eric. Slept well? Like a dead man. Curious wording, but not far from the truth, I suppose. No use dwelling on it. I think you will agree with time. You made the right choice yesterday. I can teach you many things about yourself, your blood, its desires and its powers. We will begin tonight. You are hungry, yes? I'm sure you are. Our kind always is. There's only one remedy, the blood. The drinks we had yesterday at Elysium are not the usual way you slake your thirst. So tonight I will assist you in your first foray into hunting. You need to learn to sense the kind of blood you desire, to understand how you can use the kind's vulnerabilities to your advantage. Predator and prey, huh? Grim. So let me get this straight. We are predators. Humans are prey. It's pretty grim. I know what you feel. I remember the notion. But you will inevitably grow beyond it. You need blood to thrive, but there are many ways to take it, some more humane than others. You will find that drinking moderate amounts of it regularly will keep the hunger and the whispers of the beast away. You might think yourself monstrous, but there is a balance to be found here. A kiss gives the kind pleasure. You might remember this from your own embrace. Some can even become addicted to this sensation, but if you do it right, you tend to misremember your feeding. After all, vampires do not exist. They are myths, fairy tales, and pop culture mainstays, correct? She gives you a sly, knowing smile. That is why the Masquerade is so important, and even more crucial when you feed. You cover your tracks. Biting people leaves marks, right? And the victims remember your face. You shouldn't concern yourself with leaving marks. These are easy to conceal. You just need to bite carefully, and then lick the punctures closed. That's all there is to it. As for being remembered, like I mentioned, the kiss is an ecstatic experience, so kind can barely recall the details. And even when they do, the city is enormous. You could spend days on the streets and not see the same face twice. Use that to your advantage. Feeding from the same area repeatedly can be dangerous, but by branching out you risk the ire of other kindred on whose domains you trespass. Lucky for you, New York City is more forgiving in this regard. New York is in somewhat of a unique position. Many of its neighborhoods remain contested or unclaimed. The reason for this is a lesson for another time, but keep the following in mind. Take opportunities to feed when they present themselves these upcoming nights. As long as you hunt cautiously and respect the masquerade at all times, you should be fine. To wit, I want you to join me for a trip tonight. Yes, as we've repeatedly heard, come downstairs. Gregory is waiting for us. The busy streets fill the air with traffic noise, pedestrian chatter, and a mix of smells that disorient you momentarily. These warm bodies contain what you want, what you need. You catch yourself. Did you really just think of these people as mere sources of blood? It takes a nudge from Sophie to break your train of thought. Her driver opens the door for her and then tips his hat to you, gesturing to the back of the car. The car usually joins the somewhat thinned New York traffic. It's still busy in a way only one of the biggest cities in the world can be, but compared to the daytime commute, it's a pleasant drive. You barely have the time to gather your thoughts and formulate new questions before the car comes to a stop. You're among the tall skyscrapers that make up Manhattan's iconic skyline. Come, Eric. Park the car, Gregory, will you? The driver just nods and Sophie gets out. You join her and the two of you walk through the glass doors together, then take the elevator up. You first notice an empty stage with the instruments of a string quartet still in the back, then take in the few dozen chairs in front of it. The concert seems concluded. The patrons, all smartly dressed and posh, have spread out all over the floor. All over the hall. It's not that kind of party. Sophie strides confidently inside, produces an invitation from her purse that she flashes in front of a security guard. You follow close and are let through without issue. Let's start easy. A social setting like this one would usually prove quite challenging to an inexperienced kindred, but consider this evening a small gift from your patron. I'm hoping to procure for you a willing vessel. Just remember what I told you about taking small sips. This one I have a soft spot for. Don't damage her. Now let's see here. Ah, there he is. She notices somebody in the crowd, flashes a heart-melting smile, and suddenly even you feel drawn to her. You haven't thought about it before, but it's laid clear before you in this moment. Sophie is beautiful. Just looking at her is a privilege. Just being with her makes you feel elated. Everybody in the crowd, but especially the man who's almost tripping over himself to reach her, clearly agrees. Edgar, I'm so happy to see you. How's your daughter? Is she with you? Oh, there she is. Julie, my girl, come over here, please. There's somebody I'd like you to meet. The young woman walks over across the hall. Who walks over across the hall can't be more than 19 years old. It's clear from her mismatched earrings and the partially faded purple hair dye that she doesn't fit this crowd. Julie, this is Eric. I think the two of you should get acquainted while I talk business with your dad. Awfully boring stuff, I assure you. I'm positive you'll like each other. The girl gives you a shy smile and nods toward the balcony stairs. You follow, somewhat unsure what it is exactly Sophie expects you to do. You reach a secluded place from which the entire lobby is visible. All eyes are on Sophie. They listen intently, then laugh when she does. Julie saves you the trouble of figuring out the next step. If you're with Sophie, then I guess you're, She puts her wrist to her lips and gives herself a theatrical nip, then looks to you, embarrassed, but also hopeful? You're into that sort of thing? Yeah, I do. Let's do this one. We're still incredulous. What, are you into this sort of thing? She blushes, looks down at the floor, nods. Could you? If you'd like. Miss Langley tells me She swallows hard, avoids your eyes. That I taste nice. Take the opportunity and drink from Julie. You take her forearm in your hands. A quick look around confirms nobody's watching, and no security cameras cover this area. You bite down, gently. It's surreal. She's just given you her blood of her own volition. How is this possible? What about the masquerade? You need to ask Sophie. Your thoughts disappear amid the bliss. There's just the taste. Sweet, fresh, sanguine. You drink, and drink, and drink. No, stop, stop, stop! You tear away from the girl harder than you wanted. Still, the bite leaves just tiny punctures. Almost as if by instinct, you lick them clean, and the two holes become concealed, just like that. Julie is now leaning on the wall, pale, wobbly on her feet, but happy? She lets out a dreamy sigh, opens her eyes. A few tears fall onto her shirt. Tears of joy. Thank you. Please, can you walk me downstairs, please? My dad, he doesn't know. thinks it's a condition. Ms. Langley told him so. She leans on you and requests you walk her over to a bench. She takes a seat and smiles at you. The crowd around Sophie disperses slowly, looking at her. Okay, sorry. It must have just been out of my peripheral vision, but it looked like that picture changed. Looking at her now, only some residual awe hangs in the air. Yes, she's pretty, maybe even beautiful, sure, but not your type. Oh, it's the lights. The lights are flickering. What came over you before? You walk over to her. Edgar, dear, it was splendid talking to you, but we need to get going. Give Julie my best wishes. Come with, Eric. Gregory is waiting for you out front. It's only in the car that Sophie addresses you. I can tell from your look that you took the opportunity. Good for you. That girl's exquisite, don't you think? You wouldn't tell by her demeanor, but she has so much passion. It brings out a unique bouquet in her blood. She knows who we are? I think she knows who we are. That's not normal, right? It's not usual, that much is true, but don't worry. She will do anything I tell her to, and won't say anything to anyone that I haven't put in her pretty head first. Time for the next stop. Training wheels off this time. Am I not? Okay. Gregory, Flushing Meadows, please. The driver takes the car over to the Williamsburg Bridge. You settle your thoughts. Why Flushing Meadows? What did you do to the people back there? Actually, this would be more insightful. What did you do to the people back there? Those people back at the hall, they were all entranced. Even I was under your spell. What was that? She smiles with satisfaction. That old trick? Just the blood doing my bidding. We all have our talents. Some of them come from the legacy we inherit from our sire. Others can be learned with experience. I can sway people to make them fear me. I see more of the world and in greater detail than some kindred. I can will my body to move with unparalleled precision and grace, and more. All of these skills make me who I am. They also help me hunt. How do I use my powers? How exactly do I use these talents? You will the blood to do your bidding. Many times you'll find you do these things intuitively, almost passively, but making an entire room focus their attention on you, that is tempting the beast. Always keep the masquerade in mind, however. It is all fine if you can disappear in plain sight or command animals with your mind, but save those overt talents for the right place and time. It only takes you half an hour to reach the park at this time of night. Both you and Sophie leave the car, with Gregory left behind again to find a parking spot and keep an eye on the car. Sophie seems deep in thought. She takes in the surroundings with a dreamy gaze. The sky is surprisingly clear tonight, the stars just barely visible in the light-polluted aura of the city. I feel like having a snack myself. I'll be by the fountain. Go look for somebody to your liking. See what effect you can achieve with your blood. But only pick one victim. Just one. Then come back. Seeing how she seems not altogether here right now, you decide to leave Sophie to her own devices and seek out your prey. From here, it looks like you have a few choices. Just taking a stroll around the park and finding an isolated jogger or someone like them could work, but focusing on one area might work better. The New York State Pavilion might work as a secluded spot. There's a skate park nearby, and worst case scenario, there's bound to be some unfortunate wino around. Or maybe the tennis court's nearby? There's lights coming from there, so somebody might still be playing a late-night match. They won't be alone, but they might be tired and let their guard down. As these scenarios play out in your mind, you realize you're planning how to assault a stranger in the middle of the night. It's a weird way to be, but now the familiar hunger prompts you to act. I am not sure in the lore if the quality of the blood has a dramatic impact on the hunger. I mean, it was implied that that was the case. The cold, coagulated blood that we had in the prison was not as good as presumably what was very fresh blood in the art gallery. So if we do in fact find winos here, maybe if we go to the tennis court and there is somebody else, we'll discover a power? That was kind of hinted. Okay, let's go to the tennis court. You decide the tennis courts are as good a place as any, and make your way to the bright glow of the lamps illuminating the area. As you guessed, a pair of players, two men, fit but older, maybe pushing 60. Oh, they're old blood, are finishing up a match. They're the only ones there. It's time to make a move. We have presence. Let's try it. Lure a player away. You think back to what Sophie did in the hall, how she managed to focus the attention of the entire gathering on her. That might be a tall order for you, but a single person? Could be doable. You wait patiently until the two men hit the showers, get out, and say their goodbyes. They go, well, if they're going to separate on their own, we don't really need to use our power now, do they? They go their separate ways, and one of them notices you standing there. You immediately grab his attention. Good evening? Oh yes, very good. You? Oh yeah, I'm having a blast. You? Won both sets. Not bad for a grandpa. He's clearly very happy with himself. You decide there won't be a better moment to strike, moving closer casually at first, then closing the distance in a single leap, you sink your fangs into his flesh. His blood flows fast and feels energizing. You'd never expect an invigorating taste like this from a guy who's at least your father's age. You only take as much as you need right now, though a voice at the back of your mind urges you to keep drinking. Fit or not, you don't want this guy on your conscience if you take too much. You put him on the ground, gently, and make your way back to Sophie. As you're leaving the courts, a figure emerges from the shadows and stops you in your tracks. A hooded man is looking menacingly at you. What do you think you're doing, barging into my turf like this, lick? Lick? What kind of slur is that? What did you call me? A lick? What's that supposed to mean? Don't be cute with me, I know what you are. Shove that masquerade bullshit up your ass. Better tell me who you're with before my posse shows up and we beat it out of you. I'm here with Sophie Langley? I came here with Sophie Langley. She's my patron. Doesn't ring a bell. Sounds fancy, though. He licks his lips, exposing his fangs and looking at you voraciously. A nervous tick or an attempt at intimidation. I wonder, what would Callahan do to you if I brought you in, huh? Break your shins? Leave you out to be kissed by the sun? Ooh, concrete shoes maybe. He's old school like that. Sure, let's try out another ability. Celerity, run back to Sophie fast. You take off, fast. Faster than you've ever run. The hoodlum has trouble keeping up, but howls behind you like an animal and gives chase anyway. As you reach the Unisphere again, you slow down, noticing two people near the sculpture, a man and a woman, tangled in a passionate embrace. No, not exactly. It's Sophie, feeding. But this whole scene is set up so that it looks like a couple getting intimate in public. She pulls it off like she's done it 100 times before. It occurs to you that she probably has. The man is unsure on his feet as she lets go of him and leads him toward the nearby bench. Noticing you, she whispers something into his ear and leaves him. Her driver appears from behind a tree. Well, Eric, how'd it go? You're about to answer when the same figure as before emerges from one of the alleys. He looks at the three of you, and a predatory smile creeps onto his lips. You thought you could run away from me, Lick? Think you'll be safe with your friends? Well, I have friends too. He makes a motion to shout, but two things happen almost at the same time. First, that feeling of warmth and beauty emanating from Sophie flares up again, entrancing both you and the hooded thug. The shout comes out as a weak, confused squeak. Second, Gregory produces a wooden stake from a holster under his jacket and slams it into the thug's chest. Just like that, in a few seconds, the posturing vampire is down on the ground, paralyzed. I see you've made a friend, Eric. Curious choice of company, I would say. Who is he? He said this was his turf, and I trespassed on it. I thought this place was supposed to be safe. Well, he's not a part of the Camarilla. Corona Park hasn't been claimed by anyone I know of. Curious. Let's go to the car. We'll put him in the trunk and present him to Kadir tomorrow night. I'm sure he'll be delighted to make this hoodlum's acquaintance. Gregory carries the staked vampire and dumps him in the car's trunk like a mannequin. It's a strange sight, and you're quite happy you're not in that poor fucker's shoes right now. It's almost surprising that you can get away with just casually throwing a stiff into your car and driving away. But then you remember that Sophie's been doing this far longer than you have. Still, the nagging thought that anything you did tonight could have been recorded on a CCTV camera or picked up by a rando with a half-decent smartphone and streamed online fills you with dread. Hunting and using... Sorry, my mouth's getting a little cottony here. Hold on a minute. Hunting and using your abilities is a dangerous business. It's clear that this whole being a vampire thing has about as many caveats as it has perks. You're taken out of your headspace by Sophie's voice. I will pick you up tomorrow night, same as tonight. I have some business to attend to at Elysium, and I expect you to accompany me. Plus, our friend in the back needs to be properly introduced to Kadir and the prince. I'm sure he'll have some interesting things to say to the court. Her voice is cold, cruel, and nothing like the enchanting personality she showed at the gallery earlier tonight. I think you mean last night. Sophie is clearly a woman of many faces. What's going to happen to him? The usual, I imagine. Interrogation by Kadir, probably in the basement of the gallery. Quick trial with the prince in attendance if she's there tomorrow night. A swift execution is the verdict. This all sounds eerily familiar to you, and you can't help but feel a pang of guilt when you think about what awaits this guy tomorrow night. You haven't even told me how your hunting went. Getting the hang of it, I would hope? I think so, yeah. I'll cope. I'm glad. She doesn't question you further. She seems distracted, not all there. Her thoughts drift and the car remains silent until you reach your apartment. We will pick you up tomorrow evening. Good night. Just like that, without any further courtesy, Sophie leaves, driven to her apartment by Gregory, with a body in the trunk. Right in the middle of Manhattan. Did you cross paths with situations like these in the past unknowingly? What other secrets did you pass on the streets without knowing their true nature? Your haven is just as you left it hours ago. Although the sun won't come up for some time, you feel tired. You learned something about yourself today, and it'll take time to process. You're not in the mood for television, and the few books on the shelves in the apartment are either in languages you don't speak or sound like a boring read. Nothing left to do but rest. You settle in the back room, lock the door, a moment of hesitation, but then a decision. This time, you turn the light off. You think back to Julie. How many people in this city know about this vampiric society? How many are willing accomplices in sustaining it? And the thug you met in the park. If he's not Camarilla, then what is he? Are there independent vampires? How does that work? More questions. You begin wondering if there's ever going to be a night when you can start crossing them off the list instead of adding to it. You close your eyes. You sink into the now familiar void of nothingness. It greets you with open arms, like an old friend. Okay, I guess we just hit this. And is that the save mechanism? You open your eyes. But we won't continue just yet. We'll end this one here and do it next time.